The night my ex walked out, a stranger held my door open and never really let go of my life after that. I knew something was wrong the second his hand stayed on the door a little too long, like he was waiting for me to say something I didn't have the strength to say. The hallway light flickered above us. My keys were shaking in my palm. I should have thanked him and stepped inside. Instead, I stood there, frozen, listening to my heartbeat too loud in my ears. It started with a ride I couldn't afford to refuse. My ex had just left me with silence, a sink full of dishes, and bills stacked like accusations on the kitchen counter. He didn't even slam the door when he walked out. Just sighed, rubbed his face, and said, "I'll send what I can," like love was a subscription he could pause whenever it became inconvenient. No apology. No promise. Just absence. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, staring at the unpaid rent notice. I kept rereading it like it might soften if I looked long enough. My phone buzzed with messages from classmates asking about assignments I hadn't started. My cafe manager reminding me I was covering an extra shift. My chest tightened, familiar and cruel. Every day felt like I was running late for a life that didn't want me. The bus stopped running early that week because of roadwork. Taxis were too expensive. Walking home after dark felt unsafe. That's when I opened the ride app and clicked the cheapest option without thinking. His car arrived quietly. Black. Clean. No loud music. He stepped out to open the door like it was normal, like I mattered. "Evening," he said, voice calm. "You look exhausted." I laughed, but it came out broken. "Is it that obvious?" He shrugged gently. "Long day?" I nodded and slid into the back seat, hugging my bag like armor. The car smelled faintly of leather and something warm, grounding. As he pulled away, rain started tapping against the windows, soft and steady. For the first 5 minutes, we didn't talk. Then he said my name. Not rushed. Not careless. Like he wanted to make sure he got it right. Something inside me shifted. I don't know why I answered honestly. Maybe because he wasn't looking at me, just the road ahead. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's been a lot." He didn't push. Just nodded. "I get that." No fake advice. No awkward silence. Just understanding. When we reached my building, he got out again, holding the door while I gathered my things. My shoe was untied. I fumbled with it, embarrassed. He waited. Didn't rush me. Didn't sigh. That was the first time his hand stayed on the door a second too long. "Take care," he said softly. "You too," I replied, already stepping away before I could think too much. I told myself it was nothing. The next evening, I requested another ride. And then another. He was always there. Same calm voice. Same quiet patience. "Rough shift?" he'd ask when my apron was stained and my shoulders slumped. "Customers were brutal today," I'd mumble. He'd smile in the mirror. Their loss. I hated how that made my chest warm. Some nights, I talked more than I meant to. About school deadlines. About how my ex hated when I studied late. About how I felt stupid for not seeing the breakup coming. He listened like it mattered. Like I wasn't just killing time in his car. One evening, traffic stalled under orange streetlights. The city hummed outside. I stared at my reflection in the window. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure." "Why are you so nice?" He paused. Then, carefully, "Because the world isn't." That answer stayed with me. I started timing my shifts so I could catch him. Started feeling disappointed when someone else accepted the ride. When it wasn't him, the car felt colder. Louder. Empty. Why was I like this? One night, I stayed late closing the cafe. The streets were almost empty. I checked my phone anxiously. His car pulled up anyway, headlights cutting through the dark. "You didn't have to wait," I said when I got in. He glanced at me in the mirror. "I don't mind." The words settled deep. The closeness crept in slowly. Shared smiles. Quiet jokes. Long silences that felt safe. He learned how I liked the window cracked open. I learned he took his coffee black. Sometimes he'd bring me a pastry he said he accidentally ordered twice. "Sure you did," I teased. He chuckled. Caught. My heart didn't know what to do with that sound. I noticed things. The way men on the sidewalk stepped aside when he walked past. The way his jaw tightened when someone stared too long at me. The way his phone never rang while I was in the car, always flipped face down. "You're mysterious," I said once. "Dangerous accusation," he replied lightly. I should have backed away then. Instead, I leaned closer. One night, rain poured so hard it blurred the city into streaks of light. He parked outside my building, engine still running. Neither of us moved. "You okay?" he asked. I wasn't. My chest felt tight. My fingers trembled in my lap. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of what?" "Depending on someone again." His voice softened. "I won't promise anything I can't keep." That felt worse than a lie. When he opened my door that night, the rain soaked the pavement. He held his jacket over my head. His hand brushed my arm. Electricity shot through me. "Don't," I whispered, terrified of myself. "I know," he said. But his eyes lingered. I dreamed about him after that. About his voice saying my name. About hands that steadied instead of abandoned. I woke up angry at myself. Why him, of all people? The answer came too late. I saw him across the street one evening, standing under neon lights that didn't belong to my world. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gentle. Men surrounded him, tense and alert. One of them leaned in, whispering urgently. "Yes, boss," someone said. My stomach dropped. I should have walked away. Instead, I hid behind a parked car, heart pounding, watching him command the space like it answered to him. This wasn't the man who waited in traffic with me. This wasn't the one who listened to my fears. When he looked up and saw me, his face changed instantly. "Get in the car," he said, low and urgent. "What is this?" I demanded once we were moving. "Who are you?" His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Someone who should have kept his distance. So all of it was fake? He slammed the brakes at a red light, turning to face me. "No. That's the problem." Tears burned my eyes. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because once you know, you can't unknow." The silence that followed was unbearable. After that, he disappeared. No rides. No messages. Just quiet. Again. Bills still came. Classes still demanded. Life still hurt. But now, there was this ache layered over everything. I told myself it was better this way. Safer. Then an envelope appeared under my door. Rent. Paid. Utilities. Cleared. No name. I confronted him days later when I finally saw the car parked down the street. "You don't get to do this," I said, climbing in without permission. "You don't get to save me from afar and think it fixes everything." His eyes were tired. "I didn't want you dragged into my world." "What if I wanted to choose?" I shot back. "That's the thing," he said quietly. "I didn't trust myself not to want you too much." The confession shattered me. I hate that I miss you, I whispered. I hate that you feel like home. His breath hitched. Say that again. I shook my head, crying. I shouldn't love you. But you do. The truth hung heavy between us. I won't ask you to stay, he said. And I won't walk away again unless you tell me to. My heart pounded. Fear and longing collided. For the first time in my life, I didn't run. I reached for his hand. It was steady. And that's how the stranger who held my door open became the man who stood at the center of my life, dangerous, imperfect, and real. That was when the driver started showing up. Same black car. Same quiet engine that felt more like a pause than a sound. Same calm voice saying my name like it wasn't a burden, like it belonged somewhere safe. Evening. Rough day, he'd ask, already knowing the answer from the way my shoulders sagged, from the way I climbed into the back seat like I was carrying more than a bag. The first night, rain streaked the windows so hard it blurred the city into watercolors. My shoes were soaked through, socks clinging to my skin. I tried to hide my shiver, embarrassed by how small I felt. He noticed anyway. He reached back with a clean towel, folded neatly, like he'd prepared for this exact moment. You'll catch a cold, he said, gentle, unhurried, like my well-being had somehow made it onto his list of responsibilities. I froze. No one had spoken to me like that in weeks. Not since my ex started packing his emotional bags long before he packed the real ones. Not since I learned how invisible exhaustion could make you. Thank you, I murmured, my voice barely there. He didn't say you're welcome. Just nodded and pulled back into traffic. Why was he like that? That question followed me home. It sat beside me as I wrung out my socks. It echoed while I reheated leftovers I didn't want. It whispered while I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks like they might rearrange into answers. The next evening, I told myself I was just being practical. The bus was unreliable. Walking alone after dark made my chest tight. The app was cheaper than most options. That's what I told myself while my thumb hovered, then clicked his name without hesitation. When the notification popped up, "Your driver has arrived," my heart reacted before my logic could. There he was again. Same car, idling patiently at the curb. Same posture behind the wheel, relaxed but alert, like he was always watching for danger even when nothing seemed wrong. You made it, he said when I got in, like it wasn't a given. Barely, I replied, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That became our rhythm. Every evening, I arrived carrying the weight of the day. Every evening, he made space for it without asking invasive questions, without offering hollow fixes. Some days I talked too much. About the cafe manager who scheduled me for doubles like it was a favor. About the customer who snapped at me for smiling too much. About school deadlines piling up faster than I could meet them. Other days, I said nothing at all. He never made either feel wrong. He didn't rush red lights. Didn't swerve aggressively. Didn't fill the silence with noise. The radio stayed low, some instrumental station that faded into the background unless I asked for something else. You want music? He'd ask. I'm okay, I'd say. And he'd leave it alone. That alone was dangerous. Sometimes, when traffic slowed, he'd glance at me in the rearview mirror. Not in a creepy way. Not lingering. Just checking. You okay back there? He'd say casually. And every time, my chest would tighten like he'd reached inside me without asking, like he'd brushed against a wound I'd been pretending didn't exist. Yeah, I'd lie, or sometimes, I will be. He accepted both. One evening, I noticed I was watching his hands on the steering wheel. Long fingers. Steady grip. A faint scar across one knuckle. My mind started asking questions I didn't have the courage to voice. What happened? Who hurt you? Who are you when you're not here? I hated myself for caring. Why was I like this? I started requesting his ride earlier than necessary. Waiting outside the cafe even when my shift ended late, just to make sure I didn't miss him. When another driver accepted the request instead, disappointment settled heavy in my stomach, irrational and sharp. I told myself to stop. I didn't. One night, he noticed my hands shaking when I got in. Cold? He asked. No, I said, then hesitated. Just tired. He studied my reflection for a second longer than usual. You eat today? The question caught me off guard. Yeah. I think so. He hummed softly, unconvinced, then reached into the front and handed me a granola bar, still sealed. Just in case. My throat tightened. I stared at it like it might bite. You didn't have to. I know, he replied easily. That answer did something to me. I took it, my fingers brushing his for half a second. Electricity sparked, sharp and unexpected. I pulled my hand back too fast, heart racing. He noticed. Said nothing. The city lights slid past the windows, gold and white and endless. Outside, people laughed, argued, lived. Inside the car, something unspoken stretched between us, thin and fragile and alive. I started imagining what his apartment might look like. Whether he slept easily. Whether anyone waited up for him the way I'd started waiting for that quiet engine. That scared me. One evening, I stayed late closing the cafe. The street was nearly empty, the air thick and warm. I checked my phone twice, then 3 times. His car pulled up anyway. You didn't have to wait, I said, slipping inside, guilt and relief tangling in my chest. He shrugged. Didn't mind. You could have left. I could have, he agreed. I studied his profile. Why didn't you? He was quiet for a long moment. The engine hummed softly beneath us. Some people don't like being alone at night, he said finally. I swallowed hard. That was when I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just giving me rides. He was paying attention. I noticed how his jaw tightened when a man on the sidewalk stared too long at me while I climbed out. How he positioned himself just slightly closer when we passed crowded areas. How his voice dropped when he told me, text someone when you get upstairs. You, I said once without thinking. He paused. If that makes you feel safer. It did. Too much. I hated how much I looked forward to those 20 minutes. How my mood hinged on them. How the rest of my day felt like something to endure just so I could sit in the back seat of his car and breathe. I should walk away, so why can't I? One night, rain came down hard again, drumming against the roof like a warning. Traffic crawled. The street lights flickered. Can I ask you something? I said, nervous energy buzzing under my skin. Sure. Do you ever get tired of listening to people complain? A small smile curved his mouth. Depends on the person. I laughed softly. So I'm tolerable? More than, he said, then caught himself. Cleared his throat. You're human. My heartbeat stumbled. Silence followed, thick and charged. I stared out the window, pretending to watch the rain. You don't talk about yourself much. That's intentional. Why? Because once you know things, he said carefully, they change. I turned to look at him. Change how? His eyes met mine in the mirror. Dark. Serious. Guarded. Sometimes, for the worse. A chill ran through me, and it had nothing to do with the rain. The car slowed outside my building. He parked, engine still running. Neither of us moved. You're home, he said softly. I know. Another pause. Another almost. His hand stayed on the door handle longer than necessary. That was the night I realized the danger wasn't who he might be. It was how easily I was already choosing him. One night, after a double shift that left my feet aching and my head buzzing, I slid into the back seat later than usual. The street outside the cafe was almost empty, the neon sign humming behind me like it was tired too. I dropped my bag at my feet and let my head fall back against the seat. I didn't even look at him when I spoke. "You don't have to wait if I'm late." The words came out soft, almost careless, like I didn't already know how much it meant that he did. He glanced at me in the mirror, just for a second. There was something in his eyes then, warm, steady, unreadable. His mouth curved, not quite a smile, more like a decision. "I don't mind waiting." My heart reacted before my brain could catch up. That was the spark. Small. Dangerous. Warm. It wasn't dramatic. No music swelling. No lightning striking. Just a quiet sentence spoken in a calm voice that landed somewhere deep inside me and stayed there, glowing. I stared out the window for the rest of the ride, afraid that if I looked at him, he'd see what was happening to me. After that night, things shifted in ways I couldn't explain but felt everywhere. I learned his name slowly, like a secret I wasn't sure I was allowed to keep. It slipped out one evening when traffic stalled and the silence grew comfortable instead of awkward. "What should I call you?" I asked, fingers twisting in my lap. He hesitated. Just long enough to notice. He told me. I repeated it quietly, testing the shape of it in my mouth. He smiled at the sound, like it meant something to hear it said gently. At first, we talked about nothing. Traffic patterns. The weather turning colder. How my professor loved pop quizzes. How the cafe ran out of oat milk every time I needed it. Easy things. Safe things. Then, without me noticing exactly when, nothing turned into everything. He told me he grew up too fast. Didn't say how, didn't give details, just that childhood ended early and responsibilities came sooner than they should have. His voice changed when he talked about it, like he was remembering something he buried carefully. I didn't push. I told him I was tired of being strong. The words surprised me as soon as they left my mouth. I'd never said that out loud before. Not to anyone. Strength had become my default setting, the mask I wore so no one would ask if I was okay. But in that car, in the low hum of the engine, it felt safe to admit the truth. "I don't want to be brave all the time," I said quietly. "Sometimes I just want to rest." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." No judgment. No fixing. Just understanding. When I laughed at something stupid, something a customer said, something I said myself, he laughed too. Not politely. Not because he thought he should. But like it mattered that I was happy for half a second. And when I went quiet, when the words dried up and my thoughts grew heavy, he noticed. "You okay?" he'd ask gently, like the answer mattered. Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I didn't answer at all. He stayed either way. I hated how much I wanted him. Hated how my mood lifted the second his car appeared at the curb. Hated how I counted minutes during my shift, how I watched the door, how my chest loosened when I saw him waiting. I told myself it was just comfort. Just relief. Just loneliness clinging to the nearest kindness. But I knew better. I noticed things I pretended not to. The way men on the street stepped aside when you walked past them to open my door, like they sensed something solid, immovable. The way his shoulders squared subtly when someone stood too close. The way his gaze scanned every room before I entered it, quick and sharp, like he was mapping exits without thinking. The way his phone never rang when I was around. Always silent. Always face down. Once, during a long red light, I caught myself staring at it. "You waiting for a call?" I asked lightly. "No," he said immediately. Too immediately. I looked away. There was something heavy about him. Not cruel. Not dark exactly. Just weighted. Like a storm held back by manners. Like he was constantly choosing restraint. "You're different," I said one evening, staring out the window so I wouldn't have to see his reaction. The city lights blurred past, reflections dancing across the glass. "So are you," he replied after a pause. "That's the problem." My stomach tightened. I laughed nervously. "Problem?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm but careful. "Different people change things." Why did that feel like a warning? I tried to ignore it. The complication crept in wearing kindness, and I let it. It started small. A paper bag handed back to me one night as I climbed in. "You forgot dinner again," he said casually. Inside was something warm. Simple. Something I liked. "You didn't have to," I said, but my voice cracked anyway. "I know," he replied. Then it became him waiting outside my apartment instead of driving away immediately. Sitting there until my light flicked on. "Just making sure," he'd say when I texted him. Making sure of what? That I was safe? That I was real? That I wasn't disappearing the way everyone else seemed to? Then it was him saying, "Text me when you're inside," every night without fail. Like the world was something sharp and dangerous. Like survival was a shared responsibility. I started feeling exposed. One night, I was unlocking my door when I realized my hands were shaking. I leaned my forehead against the wood, breathing through the tightness in my chest. My phone buzzed. "You okay?" I swallowed hard before typing back. "Yeah. Just tired." A lie. A small one. Another night, I noticed him watching me more closely than usual. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking." "About?" I shrugged. "Us." The word hung between us, fragile and electric. "There is no us," he said carefully. I forced a laugh. "I know." But the way his eyes softened told me he didn't believe that either. The tension built quietly, dangerously. Stolen glances in the mirror. Fingers brushing when he handed me something. Moments where the silence stretched too long, thick with things neither of us dared to say. Once, the car stalled under a flickering streetlight. He got out to check the hood. I watched him through the windshield, rain misting the air, his silhouette tense and controlled. When he came back, he leaned in too close. The scent of him, clean, warm, unmistakably him, wrapped around me. My breath caught. His eyes flicked to my lips. For one terrifying second, I thought he might close the distance. "Don't," I whispered, my voice shaking. His jaw tightened. "I know." But neither of us moved right away. I should have ended it then. Should have switched drivers. Should have created distance. Instead, I leaned into the feeling. Why was I like this? Jealousy surprised me one evening when another woman laughed too loudly at something he said while I was climbing out of the car earlier than usual. The sound scraped against my nerves. I hated myself for caring. Fear followed close behind. What if someone noticed? What if this crossed a line I couldn't uncross? What if loving him ruins everything? One night, I asked, "Do you ever wish you lived a different life?" He was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he said finally. "More than I should." The answer chilled me. Still, when he opened the door for me that night, his hand lingered just long enough to make my heart race. I stepped inside my apartment and leaned against the door, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, breath shaky, mind spinning. I knew then that whatever this was, it wasn't harmless anymore. It was a slow burn. And I was already too close to the fire. I knew we shouldn't be getting close. The thought sat heavy in my chest every time I slid into the backseat, every time my heart lifted just because his car was there. He was older. Mysterious in a way that didn't invite curiosity so much as caution. Too controlled, like every movement had been practiced, every reaction filtered. And I was still broken. Still bleeding quietly from a man who left without a fight, without even turning back to see what he'd done. I told myself this was harmless. Just conversation. Just rides. Just kindness filling the spaces where loneliness echoed too loudly. But my body didn't believe me. My pulse sped up when I heard his engine. My mood softened when he said my name. My shoulders relaxed in a way they never did anywhere else. That alone should have been a warning. I tried to pull back. I answered with shorter replies. I looked at my phone more. I told myself I didn't need to request his ride every night. It didn't last. One night, after another long shift, the car started making a sound it hadn't before. A low, uneven cough beneath the hood. He frowned, easing it to the side of the road beneath a flickering streetlight that buzzed like a tired insect. "Sorry," he said calmly. "Give me a second." The air outside was warm, thick with summer. The street was quiet, almost empty. I stayed in the car, hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to slow my breathing. Something about the stillness made everything feel louder, my thoughts, my heartbeat, the hum of the light above us. He popped the hood and leaned over, sleeves rolled up, muscles tightening as he worked. I watched without meaning to. The way he moved with certainty. The way frustration never crossed his face, only focus. Then he straightened and leaned back inside the car to grab something. That's when it hit me. His cologne. Clean. Expensive. Dangerous. It wrapped around me, sudden and intimate, like a hand at my waist. My fingers curled into the fabric of my bag. My heart stuttered. When he turned back toward me, the distance between us disappeared. Our faces were inches apart. I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. The faint line between his brows. The way his breath slowed when he realized how close we were. Time stalled. "Don't," I breathed, the word barely more than air. "I know," he said quietly. Neither of us moved. The streetlight flickered overhead. My hands were shaking now, openly. I pressed them against my thighs, grounding myself, but it didn't help. Every nerve in my body felt exposed, alive, screaming. If he leaned in, I wouldn't stop him. That terrified me. Every glance felt like a confession. Every silence screamed everything we weren't saying. I imagined his hand at my back, steady and warm. His voice low in the dark, saying my name like a promise instead of a question. I hated myself for it. I should walk away, so why couldn't I? He stepped back first. Cleared his throat. Closed the hood. "It's fine," he said, voice controlled again, walls sliding back into place. "Just needed a reset." I nodded too fast. "Okay." The rest of the ride passed in a fragile quiet. Not comfortable. Charged. Like we were both pretending something hadn't almost happened. When he dropped me off, he didn't linger. That hurt more than it should have. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The closeness. The restraint. The look in his eyes when he pulled away. Why did it feel like he was fighting something? The twist came wrapped in velvet lies. I was at a friend's place a few nights later, textbooks spread across the table, coffee going cold beside me. We were supposed to be studying, but my focus kept slipping. My phone sat face down, silent. No ride that night. No check-in. A strange emptiness settled in my chest. "I need air," I muttered, standing abruptly. Outside, the city pulsed with late-night energy. Music drifted from somewhere down the street. Laughter echoed. I hugged my jacket tighter and scanned the road without thinking. That's when I saw him. Not in the car. Not smiling. He stood across the street beneath glowing signage I'd never paid attention to before. The kind of place you didn't wander into by accident. Men surrounded him, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, alert. They didn't talk over him. They waited. One of them leaned in close and spoke low. "Yes, boss," he said. The word sliced through me. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. This wasn't the man who waited in traffic with me. This wasn't the man who handed me towels and granola bars and told me to text when I was inside. This was someone else entirely. I should have turned around. Gone back inside. Pretended I never saw him. Instead, I followed at a distance, pulse pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear it. My shoes splashed through shallow puddles as rain started to fall, light at first, then heavier. He entered the building without looking back. A private club. The kind people whispered about. The kind you only heard mentioned when voices dropped and eyes darted. I stopped across the street, rain soaking my hair, my jacket clinging to my skin. I stared at the door like it might explain everything if I waited long enough. Why him, of all people? Why the man who knew my fears? Who listened to my silence? Who made space for me in a world that never slowed down? Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time felt warped. The door opened. He stepped out. Our eyes met. The calm cracked instantly. "You shouldn't be here," he said, striding toward me, urgency sharpening his voice. My throat closed. "What is this?" I demanded, gesturing wildly. "Who are you?" He stopped a few feet away, rain darkening his hair, his jacket. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked human. Tense. Exposed. "What are you?" I repeated, my voice breaking despite my effort to hold it together. He exhaled slowly, like the truth was heavy. "Someone you should forget." The words hit harder than a slap. "So all of it was fake?" I whispered. No, his answer came fast. Too fast. "That's the problem." My chest ached. "Then why didn't you tell me?" He looked away, jaw tight. "Because once you know, you can't unknow." Rain streamed down my face, mingling with tears I hadn't realized were falling. "You don't get to decide that for me. I was trying to protect you." "From what?" I laughed bitterly. "From you?" Silence. That was enough. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs shook, until the city blurred into streaks of light and sound and pain. That night, I cried myself to sleep with my phone clutched in my hand, waiting for a message that never came. After that, he disappeared. No rides. No texts. No quiet presence anchoring my evenings. The silence returned, louder than before. Crueler because now I knew what it was replacing. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself I was safer. But every night, I still listened for a quiet engine outside my window, and hated myself for hoping. He stopped coming after that. No car idling at the curb. No calm voice saying my name. No "you okay?" text lighting up my screen at night. Just emptiness sliding back into my life like it had been waiting its turn. The silence returned, louder than before. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It pressed against my chest when I walked home alone. It followed me into my apartment, sat beside me while I ate dinner standing up, crept into my bed and lay there staring at the ceiling with me. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself I'd been stupid to dream. Stupid to think kindness could exist without a cost. Stupid to believe someone like him could ever fit into a life like mine. But every night, my hand still reached for my phone before my brain could stop it. Thumb hovering over his name. Over the empty space where his name used to be. Like it might save me. Weeks passed like that. Classes. Work. Bills. Breathing. Existing. I paid what I could. Juggled deadlines. Took extra shifts until my legs ached and my smile felt stapled on. I told people I was fine so often it almost sounded true. Almost. Then one evening, after a long shift, I heard the soft scrape of something against my door. I froze. My heart started racing before I even stood up. Slowly, cautiously, I opened it. An envelope lay on the floor. No name. No stamp. Just my address, written neatly. My hands shook as I picked it up. I knew before I opened it. I knew in my bones. Inside were receipts. Rent. Paid. Utilities. Cleared. Every overdue notice that had been haunting me for weeks, gone. I sank to the floor, the envelope slipping from my fingers. Relief hit first, sharp and overwhelming, knocking the breath out of me. Then heartbreak followed. Because there was no note. No explanation. No goodbye. No "are you okay?" Just proof that he was still watching from a distance. Still protecting me in the only way he thought he was allowed to. I pressed my forehead to the door and cried until my chest hurt. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this, half grieving someone who was still alive. Half waiting for a ghost. So I confronted him. I didn't text. Didn't call. I walked. I found his car parked a block away from my building, like it had always been. Same black paint. Same quiet presence. Like nothing had changed. He was inside. Waiting. That broke something open inside me. I opened the door without asking and slid into the seat, my hands shaking too hard to hide. "You don't get to disappear," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. My voice cracked, tears burning behind my eyes. "Not like that." He turned to look at me slowly, like he'd been bracing for this moment. "I was protecting you," he said softly. "From me." I laughed, but it came out broken. "Then why does it feel like you broke me again?" His jaw tightened. He swallowed hard. "Because I didn't walk away soon enough." The words landed heavy between us. That's when the breakdown happened. All the restraint I'd been holding on to snapped at once. My chest heaved. Tears spilled freely now, ugly and honest. "I hate that you did this," I said, my voice shaking. "I hate that you still matter. I hate that I look for you everywhere." He reached toward me, then stopped himself, his hand hovering uselessly in the space between us. "Say it," he murmured, like he already knew. "I love you," I said. The words felt like a confession and a crime all at once. I hated myself for saying them. For meaning them. For not being able to take them back. He closed his eyes like it was a sentence being handed down. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city hummed outside. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Life kept going like this wasn't shattering me from the inside out. "I can't give you a normal life," he said finally, opening his eyes. His voice was steady, but there was pain beneath it. "I can give you loyalty. Safety. Truth. But not clean hands." I thought about the nights he waited without complaint. The way he listened without trying to fix me. The way he never left me stranded, emotionally or otherwise. I thought about how alone I'd felt before him. Maybe love isn't clean. Maybe it isn't meant to be. Maybe it's choosing someone even when the edge is cut. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and realized the truth I'd been avoiding since the beginning. I wasn't afraid of who he was. I was afraid of how much I already belonged to him. The healing came quietly. Not all at once. Not with some dramatic breakthrough or sudden burst of strength. It came in small, almost invisible moments that added up before I realized what they were doing to me. I finished my semester. Some nights, I studied until my eyes burned, fueled by cheap coffee and stubbornness. Other nights, I cried over textbooks I barely understood, wondering if any of it was worth it. But I showed up. I turned things in. I passed. Every completed assignment felt like proof that I could still move forward even when my heart was bruised. I paid my own way again. It wasn't easy. I took extra shifts. Learned how to stretch groceries. Said no to things I wanted so badly it hurt. There were moments I stood at the checkout counting coins in my head, moments I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. But I did it. And every bill paid with my own hands stitched something back together inside me. I learned to breathe without expecting rescue. That was the hardest part. For a long time, every sound outside my window made my chest tighten. Every quiet engine passing by pulled my attention. My body had memorized his presence, and it took time to unlearn the instinct to wait. At first, I still checked the app out of habit. Still scanned the street when I left work. Still caught myself hoping. Then, slowly, I stopped. I stopped waiting for his car. I started walking home instead. At first, it was terrifying. The city felt too big, too loud, too unpredictable. But with every step under the streetlights, I felt something steady build beneath my fear. The glow of storefronts. The hum of traffic. The rhythm of my own footsteps. I noticed things I'd missed before. The way the air cooled after sunset. The sound of distant sirens weaving through the night like a reminder that life kept moving. The way my reflection looked stronger in darkened windows. I was still hurting. But I was healing. I told myself that loving him didn't mean I'd failed. That needing him once didn't mean I always would. That strength didn't mean doing everything alone, it meant knowing when you could. Weeks passed. Then more. I stopped replaying our conversations every night. Stopped wondering where he was, what he was doing, whether he missed me the way I missed him. I focused on building a life that didn't depend on someone else showing up. I became steadier. Then one night, everything shifted again. I was walking home later than usual, my bag slung over my shoulder, city lights reflecting off the pavement. I felt tired, but in a good way. The kind of tired that comes from effort, not despair. That's when I saw him. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wasn't parked a block away, half present, half gone. He was there. In the open. Standing beside his car beneath a streetlight that cast him clearly into view, like he wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a moment, I considered turning around. Pretending I hadn't noticed. Protecting the fragile balance I'd built. But my feet kept moving. When I stopped in front of him, the city seemed to fall quiet around us. "You look different," he said softly. "So do you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We stood there, the space between us charged but calm, like a storm that had already passed. "I won't pull you into my world," he said after a moment. His voice carried no manipulation, no pressure. Just truth. "But I won't walk away from you either. If you choose me, it has to be with open eyes." My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it. Fear rose first. All the memories. All the warnings. All the ways this could break me. Then courage followed. Quiet. Grounded. Real. I stepped closer. I've been surviving my whole life, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live now. His breath caught. Slowly, like he was afraid I might disappear, he reached for my hand. His fingers trembled when they closed around mine. This time, I didn't pull away. The city noise returned. Sirens in the distance. Cars rushing past. Somewhere above us, stars fought through the haze. Sometimes love doesn't come clean. Sometimes it comes honest. And that night, under a sky full of sirens and stars, I chose the man who stayed, even when walking away would have been easier. Now I want to ask you. What do you think about this story? Would you have made the same choice? If this story moved you even a little, please like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotionally intense love stories like this one. Your support means everything.